Do you know that in Singapore, long hair was kind of banned for guys from 1972 all the way to the 1990s? And what's even more interesting is that it's still kind of banned for Singaporean guys now. But never mind, ban or no ban, guys also anyhow, we go $10 shortcut only, so who cares, ha 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 ha. So, before anything, let's just say that it's incorrect to associate guys with short hair. You see, what hairstyle we have currently is very dependent on cultural norms. For example, back in the past, it was common for guys to have super long hair. And it's not just in the Chinese culture. More guys used to have long hair too. Even the founding father of the US had long hair. So it's common for hairstyle to change through the years. In fact, let's just look at the last 20 years or so. In the late 1990s to early 2000s, the trend for guys was to have center parting hair in Singapore culture, whereby guys would head to the barber and say,
over there, I want to look like Aaron Kwok.
The hair must cover just half the years, then you can get a stay out with Xiao Ling 83. Then, all of a sudden, Media Garden blew up. You see, back then, we only used the internet 36 hours a month, so our only source of entertainment was from the TV. Media Garden is an idiot drama featuring 4 guys who have long hair. So, every Tom, Dick and Harry started to grow out their hair, and instead of saying,
Come over there, I want to look like Aaron Kwok,
they started to say,
give me the 道明寺 hair.
Yeah, and then everywhere we went, guys had long hair. And then Sydney Legend was filled with F4 and Sanju. The trend didn't last long, but you get the idea. Guys' hairstyle is like fashion, as they change as often as Taylor Swift changing boyfriend. So, why was long hair kind of banned from 1972 to the early 1990s in Singapore? Because that sounds almost like the authorities banning a different type of fashion. Well, for a start, you need to know what the heck happened in the 1960s to the 1970s. In the 1960s, there was a countercultural movement called the hippie culture that started mainly in the US. Countercultural movement is kind of like a group of people wanting a change, so they did the opposite of what is the social norm. An example of a contemporary countercultural movement is the recent plant-based food movement. You see, for a long time, the cultural norm is that if we are not vegan, we eat meat and vegetables. But there are now people doing a countercultural movement to oppose that, advocating that we should eat just plant-based food instead, not just for religious or health reasons, but for sustainability and cruel-free living. I'm sure you have seen this everywhere, whereby food companies have overused the words plant-based so much that they might even add those words on the packaging of a garden salad. Now, whether you think it's a good movement or not isn't important in this video. You just need to know what a countercultural movement is. So, back in the 1960s, the countercultural movement called the hippie culture seek to counter a lot of social norms. You see, back then, there were many countercultural movements, because societies all over the world, especially in the West, were undergoing many changes. The hippie culture is one of them, and the goal is simple. They want peace, as the US was involved in the Vietnam War. They want love, they want freedom, and they want to live happily lah. Now, that sounds good, right? Well, it can be, except for one thing, drugs. You see, a person who has been in the hippie culture is called a hippie. They have long hair, flowery shirts, bell-bottom jeans, and have headbands. Basically just any image of a father in the 70s. And the peace sign is often associated with them. But here's the thing, other than that, they were also associated with LSD and magical. Yes, drugs. Yeah, if you think about it, the hippie culture is kind of okay, since they just want peace and love. But when you add drugs in, they become a different group of people. So somehow, the movement spread to many in the US, and then it slowly spread overseas as well. And when it spread to Singapore, that is when we started to take action. Because remember, it was in the late 1960s to 1970s, and Singapore has just gained independence. So our founding father Lee Kuan Yew wasn't happy. In 1970, just 5 years after Singapore gained its independence, then Prime Minister Lee Kuan Yew was asked this question in an interview. What tasks have already been resolved in your country, and what are the immediate problems to be solved in the near future? Back then, there were lots of challenges. NS was just introduced not too long ago. HDB was just starting to build bigger flats to solve the housing problems. We were still worried about our separation from Malaysia. Our small domestic market was affecting our economy. Unemployment was high and whatnot. So, you have bet that Mr. Lee talked about one of them. Well, he did. The first task that he talked about was that we had to address the economic viability, saying that the first task was to make ourselves economically viable, which he added that we are fortunately on the way towards achieving that. How about the immediate problem? No, he didn't talk about defense, Malaysia, or even about housing. Instead, he said this. The second point is the problem of being exposed to deleterious influences, particularly from the hippie culture which is spreading across the jet routes. Yeah, you see, the world has started to globalize, and Singapore was starting to be exposed by other cultures. He spoke in a very chill manner, but basically, based on what ChatGPT summarized, hippie culture spreading through air travel is a problem for Singapore. We are very open to outside influences because we are an air and sea hub. Things like songs, TV, and movies promoting escapism and drugs are a big threat to young people, so we need to be super strict to stop it and teach young people to resist these bad habits. If we don't, you'll ruin us like it did to some Western countries. Okay, thanks. Show me pictures of naked people. Hey, what the? FBI, open up! Yeah, So basically, Singapore was very serious about this. You see, it's not because that the culture might be coming to Singapore. It had already reached Singapore. There were people dressing up like hippies in Singapore, and local bands were leaning towards the hippie culture. And yes, this is why you have often seen your dads or granddads wearing flowery shirts, because their idiots were wearing the same thing. It's like people wearing friendship bracelets when Taylor Swift came to Singapore. Now, that seems harmless, right? Well, as mentioned, these are actually fine, except that the hippies are also associated with drugs. You see, in the late 1960s, there was a bit of a drug problem in Singapore, mainly young people who go clubbing. But soon, more students were caught taking drugs as time went by. So much so that in October 1971, Singapore set up the Central Narcotics Bureau (CNB) to tackle this problem. The reason why more people were taking drugs were then attributed to the hippie culture. Basically, you can say that hippie culture is associated with drugs, and drugs are associated with the hippie culture. Initially, the government tried to stop the hippie culture from influencing Singaporeans by kind of restricting certain songs in Singapore. They also banned people who look like hippie from entering Singapore. But how did they do that? Simple. It's said that dirty and untidy looking people with long, unkempt hair and blah are presumed to be hippies unless proven otherwise. But anyways, as expected, some people weren't happy lah. But these people are likely haven't served NS before lah. Anyways, I think you know where this is going. Other than stopping long-hair hippie lookalike people from entering Singapore, long-hair male performers also cannot perform on local TV and radio. Soon, the ban spread from external to the inside of Singapore. Eventually, in January 1972, the campaign against long-hair guys were targeted at Singaporeans as well. The Ministry of Home Affairs launched Operation Snap Snap. Yeah, it's really called Operation Snap Snap. For a start, all guys with long hair will be refused entry to Singapore, except for visitors invited by the government or respectable organizations for official business. If you're a Singaporean, you can still enter Singapore, but your passport will be taken away and you can only collect it back when you have cut your hair. Now, that was still not that serious until a few months later, when Operation Snap Snap went into overdrive. These iconic posters was put out in all government offices. You see, if you're a guy with long hair, you'll be served last in the government office. I know what you're thinking. Who cares? Who needs to go to government offices? Well, we can do everything with our SingPass now, but in the past, we need to head to government offices to make any applications with the government. So people usually had to head to government offices quite regularly. If it's still confusing, just think of it this way. If you're a guy with short hair, you have got SingPass Plus, which was like the SingPass you have right now. If you're a guy with long hair, you have got SingPass Lite, with non-skippable apps promoting some stupid games appearing wherever you try to file any application with the government. But that's not all. The government even discouraged employers from hiring long-hair men, and long-hair men working for the government will also face disciplinary action, including termination of service. As you can tell, it's not a total ban but it's kind of like a wife saying,
"Sure, don't drink with Tan Ziwei lah. Go, I'm not stopping you. Go, come back, then you stay on the sofa."
You want to join the Singapore government? A better example would be like the COVID-19 vaccine in Singapore. People were not forced to take the vaccine, but of course, if you didn't, you couldn't do a lot of things. Yeah, but you can bet some people weren't happy with the long hair ban but if you think about it, it worked very well. Singapore is one of the countries with the lowest rate of illegal drug use, while in the US, where hippie culture came from, it has one of the highest rates of illegal drug use. Now, when did this so-called long hair ban end? Actually, it went on for a while, but there were not many reports about it. You see, the hippie culture slowly died off in the late 1970s, and there were no longer any news reports about long hair guys in Singapore. But the Home Affairs Ministry said in 1986 that the ban hasn't officially ended. It was reported back then that much of the long hair ban is no longer being enforced. In 1993, the Ministry of Information finally lifted the restriction of the songs that were restricted or banned during the anti-hippie campaign. Many people therefore believe that this marks the complete lifting of the long hair ban. Of course, whether stopping people from having long hair works in stopping drugs or not, we'll never know. But here's one thing you probably didn't think of. Actually, as of now, long hair is still kind of banned for guys in Singapore. Yeah, I'm not kidding. You see, all male Singaporeans as second-generation Singapore PRs have to serve 2 years of NS. During the first 3 months or so, whereby they are undergoing basic training, they have to shave their head, which is primarily to show that everyone is equal. After that, for the remainder of the NS, they have to keep short black hair. Most people will know that. But what you might not know is that these people who have served NS will need to attend about 10 cycles of in-camp training, with each training, also called ICT, taking place once a year. And here's the thing again. During ICT, they cannot have long hair and dye hair too. I mean, by right lah, if you know it, you know it. It takes months for hairs to grow, so when a guy manages to grow to a length he desires, he might need to head to ICT again and therefore has his hair cut again. Therefore, I will go out on a limb and say that because of this, many male Singaporeans would rather just keep their hair short. And if you think this issue of Singapore sounds interesting, watch this video as well to know why, in the past, there were Primary 7 and Primary 8 in Singapore. Thank you for spending 9 minutes with me. I really appreciate it and hope you learned something.